Oh, hey there. Come on in. We're just about to start. Welcome to My Wife the Dietitian, a fun weekly podcast about nutrition and healthy lifestyle. I'm Rob, and together with my wife Sandra, we invite you to join us on this informative and entertaining journey through the complex world of healthy eating.
Join us each week as we strive to help you with transforming your overall health and relationship with food through up-to-date, evidence-based nutrition information. Today, we learn all about the keto diet. We talk to dietitian Rochelle Inwood, author of The Keto Conversation.
In our culture, we just have this, we see the latest diet and then we try it. And we may not have all the information that we need. And that was really my intent with this book, is that, we try things without actually digging through it. And my book is to actually help providers and dietitians better understand it so we can address those questions for our patients so they can decide if that eating pattern is right for them. Because it's really, really restrictive. Does it work? Yes. But is it something that somebody can sustain long-term? Maybe. Most often, not really.
Stay with us for this informative discussion all about the ins and outs of the keto diet.
Welcome to My Wife the Dietitian. Hello, Sandra.
Hey, Rob.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good. Today we have an interview with dietitian Rochelle Inwood from the Dietitian Resource, and she just wrote a book on all the variations of keto diet. So we talk about low carb, the dirty keto, the clean keto, and lazy keto, and foods that are included in all of those versions of the different ketos. And it's a really eye-opening discussion.
Yeah. Let's go learn all about keto.
Hi, good morning. We're here with Rochelle. Rochelle, give us a little bit of background of yourself and tell us who you are and what you do.
Well, good morning, everyone. And thank you so much for having me on the podcast today. I'm so excited to be here. As Sandra said, my name is Rochelle Inwood. I am a registered dietitian and exercise physiologist by trade. I actually served in the VA for about 14 years before kind of going off and branching off on my own. What I do now, I own the business called the Dietitian Resource. And what I do is I build resources for dietitians. We have so much information out there, and dietitians are very busy, just like other professionals, and building out all of those education resources can take a ton of time. And I just love geeking out on those things. And so my goal is to really make handouts, presentations, books, all of those things for dietitians so they don't have to create it and they can just focus on the patient care side. So that's a little bit about me. Thanks for having me.
Wow, I love that. That's just, I didn't realize you were an exercise physiologist too.
Yeah,
That's really cool.
I don't say much about that, but I should.
Well, it's all part of the behavior change and helping people with goals of lifestyle, including diet and movement. So that's it's a great combination.
Yeah,
It
really.
is. Yeah, it was definitely part of my personal journey.
It's a cool niche you've got too. I mean, just working with, specifically for dietitians and preparing information for them. It's a great idea, really.
Well, thank you. I'm enjoying it.
I just wanted to go back a little bit. Can you explain what VA stands for?
Oh, yes, that's a great question. I worked for the Veterans Administration. So I served veterans for about 14 years. And it was just such a great population because they have so many different medical conditions and diagnoses that, it runs the gamut of things that you see people for. So it was a really challenging and educational and delightful experience all the way around.
Absolutely. A good foundation for your work as a clinical dietitian, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Good. Okay. Well, you just wrote a book on the keto diet to basically help dietitians navigate this whole kind of world of keto diet because there is a big trend out there right now. We have friends that have done it. I have had many clients over the past few years that have come to me because they have fatty liver or they now have gout or they have kidney stones and they had been on a keto diet for the last couple years before having those diagnoses. So we wanted to get you on here just to get some ideas about the different basics of what a keto diet is versus a low carb diet. And maybe that's what we'll start with, that question. What are some basics of a keto diet versus low carb?
Well, first off, I want to tell you that's exactly the question that I started off with when I started doing this research. I was like, well, what is the difference between all of these diets? And there's so many different versions of keto too, right? So it's so confusing. It's so confusing for our patients. It's so confusing for us. It's so confusing for our providers too. So that's actually where I started asking questions. Was like, what is a keto diet versus what is a low carb? And so to answer that question with keto is going to be lower in carbohydrate. So typically within the research, you'll see that if somebody is following a ketogenic diet, they're consuming less than 50 grams of carbohydrate per day. Some go as low as 20 grams of carbohydrate per day, which can be, definitely really low. But what the research does show is most adults can reach ketosis if they're consuming less than 50 grams of carbohydrate per day.
Can I just interrupt you for a sec?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, what's the recommended daily allotment or whatever for carbohydrates for just a regular adult? Just so we know what we're talking about comparison-wise.
Absolutely. Great question. So the acceptable macronutrient distribution range, so AMDR might be another way that folks hear about that, for carbohydrates is 45 to 65% of their total calories, which equates to about 225 grams to 325 grams per day. So you're taking that range and cutting it down to 50 or below.
That's crazy. Huge. Wow. Yeah. Okay. I'm glad I asked.
Yeah. Really great question.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. Carry on then.
No, please interrupt anytime you want, because I think all these questions are super important. So typically, when somebody is following a keto diet, they will consume less than 10% of their total calories from carbs. And remember that recommendation is 45 to 65%. So they're cutting it down to 10%, or again, less than 50 grams of carbohydrate per day. And I know that's a lot of numbers. Right. So typically what I just encourage folks to focus on is either that 50 grams being less than or less than 10% of their total calories coming from carbs.
Right.
So, and then typically with that, the other key thing that people focus on, because the keto diet isn't just the carbohydrate piece, because as you know, when we cut out one thing, we have to add something back in. So what tends to happen is when carbohydrates go low, then the fat content goes high.
Right.
And Sandra, what you mentioned earlier with some of your patients with, having fatty liver disease or, kidney stones or things like that, there are those associations with kind of having that macronutrient shift. It's not guaranteed for everybody, but there is going to be some of those possibilities sometimes.
Okay, interesting. Because, it's never like cause and effect. It's like a correlation. We don't know if the keto diet caused someone's kidney stones or their gout or their high triglycerides or, other problems that they're seeing now. But that was like the biggest factor that changed in their lifestyle. So it seems like it's a cause and effect, but you never know for sure because it's not a randomized control trial and, like just changing one or two things. So no, I like that you explained that just the breakdown of the macronutrients and the ratio and what a keto means. And one thing, I don't know if Rob asked you, I don't think he did. What is ketosis for our listeners?
Oh man. Yes. So ketosis is basically when your body is relying on fats. So what your body does in ketosis is when you are either restricting calories totally, so if you're in a starved state, or if you reduce your carbohydrate intake so low that your body actually has to switch the source of energy that it's getting all the calories from, it switches to fat. And then when fat is broken down, it breaks down into fatty acids. And those are actually converted eventually to ketones. And those ketones, when they're elevated to a certain level, it's a defined level where somebody will be in ketosis. And so again, there's a lot of like nerding out and geeking out that I would love to do on this topic. It can get a little bit complicated with metabolism, but that's really what happens is the body shifts to fat metabolism. And eventually, because it's breaking down all of those fats, ketones are produced. And when the ketones are elevated in the blood, then they reach ketosis.
Great explanation. Thank you. That's very detailed. And did that make sense, Rob?
Yeah. Yeah. And the purpose of someone doing a keto diet, is it like primarily weight loss? Is that kind of the goal with ketosis and the keto diet?
Great question. So initially, the ketogenic diet actually began to help treat epilepsy or seizures. So way back, even like biblical times, they actually started seeing the benefits of somebody being in a starved state because it was helping reduce seizures. Yeah. And so in the 1920s, they actually started noticing that when somebody was in a starved state, they had higher levels of ketone. And then at the same time, they started calculating, well, do we have to have people be in a starved state? Or can we have them eating a certain distribution of calories or, macronutrients to see if we can get the same effect? And in the 1920s, they actually came up with the calculation for, the carbohydrates being low, the fat content being high, and then protein, just being it's a low level as well, to actually see ketosis as well. So people aren't going to have to be starved. And they used that diet for the treatment of epilepsy and seizures in children, starting kind of around the 1920s. And then it really halted in the 70s because they started finding medications that could do the same thing. But in the 1990s, then it kind of made another swing again because there was a kiddo by the name of Charlie that his parents researched it and they found the ketogenic diet and they started using that, and it really helped him reduce his seizures.
Oh, crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a super interesting history too. I knew that there was some evidence to suggest it does help kids having epileptic seizures. And that's kind of where it all stems from. And now there's a growing body of evidence that it might be helpful in other conditions. Is diabetes one of those conditions that you ran across through doing your research for the book?
Yes. And, there was a lot of different areas that I looked at. Diabetes was a really big one. There's a lot of research that goes into, weight management, diabetes management, and things like that. So there's a lot of research about the ketogenic diet and diabetes. And typically, what people are looking at is, again, that reduction of carbohydrates. And typically what people are finding is when you do reduce carbohydrates, you can see a big improvement in blood sugar. But the key thing to keep in mind with any eating pattern is that it always needs to be individualized. So when we're talking about an eating pattern, it's not going to be a one size fits all. So I want to caution right there that, with the ketogenic diet, there is a time and a place for it, but everybody that you talk to, dietitians including, is going to say, let's start with some, let's reduce the intake of maybe some refined products first. And then let's focus on whole food intake first. And then let's try to get some other lifestyle things nailed down first. And then let's try that ketogenic diet if all else fails. Because really, with restrictive eating patterns, as we all know, if we restrict something, that's really what we want. So it leads to this yearning. So with the ketogenic diet, yes, it has been, something that does help with the diabetes management and things like that. But is it the only way to manage diabetes? Absolutely not. There's so many other ways to do it.
Interesting.
Yeah. Wow, that is so true. It's exactly what you said. I think that's a really good approach for counseling patients. And in terms of just like looking at the ultra processed foods in their diet and other lifestyle things going on in their life, their sleep, their stress, all that before you just jump into a restrictive diet like the keto diet. That's a really, I'm glad you summarized that. That makes sense.
Yeah. Well, good. Yeah, I know sometimes that, is in our culture, we just have this, we see the latest diet and then we try it. And we may not have all the information that we need. And that was really my intent with this book, is that, we try things without actually digging through it. And my book is to actually help providers and dietitians better understand it so we can address those questions for our patients so they can decide if that eating pattern is right for them. Because it's really, really restrictive. Does it work? Yes. But is it something that somebody can sustain long-term? Maybe. Most often, not really.
Right.
And there's dangers
And
involved too, right? There's risks.
Correct.
That's the next question. What are some risks and contraindications of the keto diet, and are other population groups that it's not recommended for?
Yeah, great question. So when somebody does follow the ketogenic diet, some of the most common risk factors or like side effects or symptoms that they'll experience will be things like a headache, fatigue. They're going to lose a lot of fluid. They may experience some constipation. They may have muscle cramps. They may have that increased blood cholesterol. Those are some there. And then there's more. I have a bigger list within the book, but those are the most common risk factors or side effects that somebody will experience when they try a ketogenic diet.
Okay. And then is there, like, I know with pregnancy, it's not recommended. Are there other population groups that it's kind of not a good idea for them to do the keto diet?
Yeah, great question. So there are a few medical conditions where like these individuals should absolutely not try the ketogenic diet. And they have to do with fatty acid breakdown, right? So if somebody's not able to break down fatty acids very well, then they don't want to be on the ketogenic diet because that's going to lead to a lot of issues. Also things like the blood biosynthesis pathway. So the way our blood is created, if individuals are having disorders within that pathway, they shouldn't follow the ketogenic diet either. So those conditions really, that needs to be ruled out before anybody begins the ketogenic diet. Other possible contraindications, meaning, things that may put somebody at risk. There's a pretty good size list, and I'll go through that with you now. If somebody is 18 years of age or younger, if they're still growing, they really should talk to their medical team before considering the ketogenic diet. Now that would be, for kiddos that are having epileptic seizures, right? So that might be the only indication that somebody below the age of 18 would consider the ketogenic diet. If somebody has acid reflux, the ketogenic diet may not be the best option because we know that high fat diets can actually increase the risk of acid reflux. For individuals with cancer, it can be a risk factor. There is research out there that there may be some types of cancers that it can benefit. But a lot of times when we see folks on the ketogenic diet, they're actually losing weight. And when people are getting cancer treatment, we don't want them to lose weight. We really want them to actually maintain their weight because of the risk factors that are associated with weight loss during cancer. I mentioned constipation. Diabetes can be, a possible contraindication, meaning we need to really monitor those patients because we don't want their blood sugar to drop too low. Digestion difficulties, if they have issues swallowing, if they have a history of eating disorders. So we don't want to encourage somebody to restrict their foods if they already have a history of eating disorders. Gallbladder disease, gout, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, history of kidney stones, if they're not taking in enough nutrition already, kidney disease or kidney failure, liver disease or liver failure, metabolic acidosis, if they have food allergies, and if they really struggle with not following other recommendations, because of lifestyle things getting in the way, pancreatitis, pregnancy or breastfeeding, and religious restrictions, and even if they've already received bariatric surgery. So I know that's a really big list, but those are some possible things to keep in mind.
So when someone's interested in starting this diet, obviously they would need to talk to a medical professional and is it something that you need to keep monitoring, to make sure that your body's reacting the way you want it to be? Or it sounds kind of complex.
Beautiful question. It is. It's really complex. And yes, you do need to be monitored when you are following the ketogenic diet. So if somebody is genuinely needing to be in ketosis, then they need to check their ketone levels, whether that be through like a breathalyzer, whether that's through blood or whether that is through urine. There's those 3 different ways to track ketone levels, and some are better than the others. So you need to monitor that. But then there's also those other labs that we need to monitor, including cholesterol being one of them. And then we need to make sure that they're maintaining their other nutrient needs. So they may require nutrition supplements in different areas, calcium, vitamin D being some, selenium being some to consider. So there's definitely a lot of monitoring that needs to go into it. So my really big red flag that I wave here is that if somebody is following the ketogenic diet, make sure that you are being monitored. And if you are going to a provider that says, hey, you should be following the ketogenic diet, and that's all they tell you, and then there's no follow-up, run. Because that's really, you're not getting the support that you need.
I'm guessing there's probably a good majority of people who are on the keto diet who aren't being monitored, who just read about it in a magazine or online, and they start eating all the keto foods and doing what they think they're supposed to be doing, and they're probably losing weight, and they're like, oh, right on, it's working, this is great, and so they keep doing it, not realizing the danger, down the road that they're potentially putting themselves in.
Yeah, there definitely are those risks for sure. And that's where it is really important to speak with a registered dietitian and have a team to support you if you are considering this. Because, I am all for people trying and figuring out what works for them. It is a personal journey to figure out what eating pattern is going to work for you. But let's get all that information so you know what to do, and you do it in the best educated way so you can identify what nutrients might be missing, how you're feeling throughout that process. If it's not working for you, who you can talk to make sure that you're modifying things to get things back to where you need them to be.
Yeah, I think that's important to highlight that.
I have a comment just on the when you said like the nutrients of concern that you might be lacking. And this is what I see when people, they have a symptom of constipation, which is new for them. And then in looking deeper at their intake, they're really not getting enough fiber. In this podcast, in previous episodes, we focused on fiber. And I think because like for your gut biome and, prebiotics, they're vegetarians, they thrive on fiber. And in a keto diet, it's such a high fat that it's a lot of, for some keto diets, I think there's a lot of animal products. And so animal products have no fiber, and then they are just not getting enough fiber. And so it can change their whole gut microbiome, and it can affect their digestion and their bowels. And is that something that you notice too, or is that something that you've seen as a red flag in terms of constipation and fiber?
Absolutely. Spot on. Great thing to bring up there, Sandra. The constipation is definitely one of those big side effects that people will experience. And as you so eloquently said there, it's all related to that fiber piece, right? And that is because we're cutting out a lot of those carbohydrates. And typically where we find fiber is in plants. And so if you're cutting out the fibrous fruits and vegetables and whole grains, then you're not getting that fiber, and that can definitely back you up.
Yeah, that's something I just wanted to ask about, and something that I've seen. So that makes a lot of sense. And I guess there is some different keto diet kind of subgroups. Like there's like the dirty keto and the clean eating keto, and I'm wondering, is that something that you can explain to the listeners what all those differences are and what different types of keto diet there are?
Yes, I love that you highlight this too. I just want to say that because you're bringing up that there are so many different versions within the keto umbrella, right? Which again makes it even more confusing. So if somebody's following keto, which version?
Right.
So the dirty keto really is a version of the ketogenic diet where they calculate and they follow the carbohydrate restriction, the fat intake, and also the protein, but they really don't worry about the quality of the food that they're eating. And when I say that, I mean that they may go eat a lot of really processed foods, some fast foods, really like fried foods, like a lot of burgers, takeout, even sugar-free sodas, things like that. That they're going to be eating a lot of those types of foods and not really worrying about the quality of the food. They're still restricting that carbohydrate intake though. So dirty
Right.
keto is really not worrying about like the quality of the foods that they're eating. And it typically is higher in saturated fats and trans fats, which is of concern, because that can elevate cholesterol, and the elevation of cholesterol can really lead to heart disease and those risk factors.
Absolutely. And I'm just thinking like the greasy fries, like the deep fried fatty foods that really are not good for our arteries, or not good for our cardiovascular system, and not good for our gut. And I think, having a dirty keto diet is just setting up for potential health problems in the future. That's from just knowing about like deep fried greasy foods and what they do to you over time. Like it's just
Yeah.
oh, it's frustrating when you see people that are following these types of diets, and then they also are saying, well, I'm trying to listen to my hunger cues and intuitive eating, and I can eat whatever I want whenever I want. But then they're also on a dirty keto, which is so unhealthy. And
Yeah.
so there's all these conflicting messages out there, and it's hard for people to know what to do and what to follow. But it's just
It is.
it can be a minefield.
It really can.
I bet the marketing of, products, there's all these companies jumping on the bandwagon going, oh, or, you can eat our product. It's keto friendly, but is it healthy? Right. And so people
Right.
think, oh, it's keto, I can eat it because they're telling me it's keto and I can eat it, but it's maybe not the healthiest choice. Right.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Really good points. Yeah, and we bring up how many different versions of keto that there are. There is, you mentioned a clean keto and a lazy keto too. So with clean keto, really the focus with the clean keto diet is they focus on those macros again. So they're restricting carbohydrates, getting high fat diet, and getting, some protein, but they focus on like more whole foods. So you'd mentioned, maybe those processed foods aren't quite as good. So for clean keto, they focus on things like eggs and fish, full fat dairy, healthy oils like olive oil, avocado oil, lean meats like poultry, low glycemic fruits like berries, and non-starchy vegetables. So you're getting some fiber in there, nuts and seeds, and unsweetened beverages. So if I was talking to a patient, we were talking about, which one, if they were adamant about following a keto diet, I would definitely encourage, let's try, doing something that's more whole food based versus the dirty keto.
Yes, I totally concur. That's what I would do too. Just let's focus on the minimally processed whole foods. And then if you want to change your macronutrients and have more avocado and nuts and seeds and the fats that come from plant fats, that would be a good way to kind of increase the fat and reduce the carbs without going the ultra processed and fast food and deep fried fatty food route.
Yes, spot on. And then that last version.
What's the lazy? Oh, sorry. Yeah. What's the lazy keto?
Yes, great question. So the lazy keto diet is really the one where probably you're not going to reach ketosis, because really the only thing that they're focusing on is cutting the carbohydrates down to 50 grams per day. And they're not as mindful of the fat content and the protein content. So really lazy keto is just saying, oh, like somebody might be walking around saying, I'm following the ketogenic diet. I'm eating less than 50 grams of carbohydrate per day. And that's the only thing that they're focusing on. So what they're doing is they're using label reading, and they're subtracting that dietary fiber from the total carbohydrates to get the net carbs of a processed food, to figure out, how many grams of carbohydrate they're getting in a day, and they're restricting it to less than 50 grams per day.
So
Did
like
that
you
make
said,
sense?
they think they're on the keto diet, but they're not really getting any results, or they're just sort of restricting their carbs.
Yeah, they're restricting their carbohydrates. And what they may be doing too, which is a risky thing in my personal opinion, what you can see is when people are only focused on the carbohydrate piece, they may be reducing, all of their nutrients, right? They may not be getting enough protein. They may not be getting enough fat as well. And so they may be just getting like malnourished because they're not consuming enough calories, period. And so that can be, a little bit risky. And, educating people to say, hey, this is, only one part of a balanced way of eating. Can we talk about some different ways that you could incorporate some different foods too?
Yeah, for sure. Educating people, right, on sort of the proper way, because it sounds like keto is pretty complicated, and it's not something you can just read in a magazine and start doing the way some other diets are. So it sounds to me like the bottom line is to is to talk to someone who knows what they're talking about.
I agree 100% because as we've talked about today, there's so many different versions, and these are just a few of the keto versions. There's also therapeutic versions. So if I can just briefly
Wow.
share what those are, there's therapeutic versions that, are known as the classic keto diet, modified keto, medium chain triglyceride oil, low glycemic index therapy, the modified Atkins diet. So those are all versions of the ketogenic diet. So when we're talking keto, that's where, how I originally started going into this research. Well, what's the difference between low carb and keto? Well, it just opened up the floodgates because there's so many different versions of keto. So it really is important that we as dietitians understand what the ketogenic diet is, all the versions, so we can really have
Right.
that conversation with our patients and help them figure out if it is best for them.
Yeah, I get it. Wow, that's just incredible. It's like a rabbit hole of keto diets. Like there's just so many. And it's
Yeah.
almost like, the whole idea of diets in the first place, if it's not medically necessary, but it's something that, oh, I want to lose weight or whatever reason, it's like, oh, it's just getting into that disordered eating pattern and like diet culture. And it's just so prevalent on our social media. It's just so out there. And I think people feel like, oh, I need to fit into this diet or that diet, or I'm on this diet just because it's either they want to do what their friends are doing, or they just feel like, well, I need to be on a diet if I need to be healthy. Like, no.
It's so true.
Oh.
And I'm sure even within, our own families, because, my family members as a dietitians, they have their own ideas of what is considered healthy. And even with our own families, they may not ask us the questions because there's like a fear around not understanding things. And so again, that's where I really want to open up this dialogue. Let's start talking more about what each of these things are. There's no shame in not understanding it because it is so complicated. Let's talk.
Totally. Exactly. That's the whole reason we have a podcast is to,
Yes.
that's why we're doing what we do, to share information and I ask the questions. I represent all the people out there who don't know what you guys are talking about. You guys being dietitians and health professionals. I'm just the layperson. So, I get it. There are a lot of questions that people have, and I think it's the more information we can put out there, the better.
Absolutely.
Totally. And like you said, it's opening up the dialogue. It's actually creating conversation. It's kind of dispelling some of the myths because there's so much out there that it's hard. It's a big maze of misinformation. And so I love having experts on here. And you just wrote your book on the keto diet. So you have all that valuable information at like on the tip of your tongue. And I'm so glad that you were able to kind of distill all that complex information kind of in some real precise points for us today. That was like super helpful. I really appreciate that, Rochelle.
My pleasure. It's such a geek out topic for me.
Absolutely. No, it makes sense. There's one last question that we ask all of our guests, and I think I sent this to you earlier. It's when you go to a potluck dinner, what dish do you bring?
Oh man. So I had a hard time narrowing it down to just one. So I picked two. But
I love it.
one of them is it's called the green salad. And I found this recipe in the Forest Feast cookbook by Erin Gleason. And it has everything green in the salad. It has cucumber, pear, celery, green onion, edamame, which are soybeans, pistachios, basil, lime juice, and salt. And it is like my favorite salad. It has like all of the sweetness, the crunch, like all the salt in it all in one. So the green salad, I love it.
That sounds
I
awesome,
love
like
it.
really
Oh my
fresh
God.
and yeah, yummy.
Green salad. Sorry, Rob,
Yeah.
what did you say?
I just said yummy. It sounds delicious and fresh and yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
it
yeah,
is
like
so good.
fresh, like a summer salad, right? It's just so like bursting with flavor and crunchiness and just fresh. It sounds so good.
Oh, I love it. I do. I can't speak highly enough about the green salad.
That's awesome. What's your other one?
Oh, yeah. The other one would be a dessert because, as people don't think that dietitians love dessert, but we do. We love desserts because they're just amazing. But my favorite dessert to take is a soda cracker pie. And it's actually a family recipe. I think it was developed during the Great Depression because it is whipped. Yeah, it's whipped egg white. So it's basically kind of creating that meringue, and then crushed saltine crackers and crushed walnuts and sugar. And you mix all of those together and bake it in a pan, and you top it with whipped cream if you want to. And it is so good. It's not the prettiest pie, but it is so good.
That is so interesting. Oh my gosh. Soda crackers crushed up with walnuts and sugar, and then the meringue and whipped cream on top. Soda cracker pie. That is so interesting. Oh my God. I love it.
What did the soda crackers do? Did they just give it bulk?
Yeah, they just kind of give that, I guess that would be kind of where the flour part is coming from.
Right.
So they get all soft and gooey, but then the walnuts, you have that crunchiness, and then the egg whites make it fluffy. And it creates its own beautiful crust.
Cool.
That is so unique. Oh my gosh. We're making a recipe book with the recipes of our previous guests. And I'm hoping that we can use both of those recipes in their book. And if you could send me the actual recipe, then we will add them in. And this one is one I want to make. This is so interesting. Oh my goodness.
Totally.
Oh, wow. Oh, well, thank you so much, Rochelle. That was really enlightening, and it really will help people, I think, just to get a better understanding of the keto diet and what it all entails and all the variations of the different ones you can look at and maybe steer away from. And or get help. I think that's the other message is, if you're going to embark on any kind of diet, I think, especially a keto, it's a really good idea to have some guidance and some medical supervision and help with a healthcare provider to help navigate and help monitor you through all the stages of your diet. But also, bigger picture, maybe you don't need to do that. Maybe maybe you can look at just changing a few lifestyle things and to help yourself that way. But anyways,
Exactly.
Rob, any other last questions?
No questions, but I just wanted to ask Rochelle where people can find your book and maybe track you down online. You have Facebook and Instagram and that sort of thing, a website, I presume.
Yeah, all of the above. First, the book is on Amazon, and it is called The Keto Conversation, and it is available on Amazon. And then I am on all the socials. I'm most active on Facebook and Instagram at the Dietitian Resource. So yeah, if you're interested in following me, you can find me at the Dietitian Resource.
Great. I'm sure you've got tons of information through your social media as well as your book. It's
yes.
I've had a look at both your pages, and yeah, it seems like you're on there pretty frequently. So lots of info for people that are looking for that sort of stuff.
Yes, and Rochelle wrote a wonderful, wonderful blog post article to summarize all this information. So people can they can listen to this, then they can read also, just if they need more, information in a written form, that will be on our blog too. So that's, this has been so valuable. I really, really appreciate all of your support here, Rochelle, and your information. It's been a really good experience. Thank you so much.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you guys so much for having me. Have a wonderful day.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, Rochelle.
Bye, guys.
Wow, I didn't realize there was so much to know about that keto diet.
I know. There's so many different ways that people do it.
Yeah, that's all new to me. I'd never heard of any of that stuff.
Yeah, like lazy and dirty and low carb and clean.
Dirty keto.
It's so interesting.
I wonder if people who do the dirty keto say that, oh yeah, I'm doing the dirty keto. They probably don't even realize it. That's a term to designate people who aren't quite doing it right.
Interesting. You know what? I'm thinking it might be similar to the caveman, or what is it? Carnivore diet?
The paleo, the carnivore.
The carnivore, because
where they eat deep fried chicken and stuff. Probably not, but maybe. I don't know.
The dirty keto is very high in fat.
But you can have healthy fat. I think the dirty is like where you're eating garbage, processed foods and potato chips and
bacon
and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
It's interesting. Anyways, I found it very eye-opening just to see all the different versions of keto.
Yeah. Yeah. She sure knows her stuff too. Hey, it's neat talking to people like that who've done the homework, and it's one reason why it seemed like there's so much information that we'd never heard, because she just brought it all out.
Yeah. Well, when you write a book, you really delve into all of the content, like in a big way, right? So that's why I wanted to get her on here about the keto, because she just wrote a book. And so it's top of mind. She's done the research and like got that information, and it's comprehensive. And there's a blog article that goes along with her, this. It's coming. I don't think it's quite on the website yet, but it's coming in the next few days.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. That'll be good to sort of review, because it's the kind of thing you need to like look over a few times to understand the science part of it, I think. You know, how it works and why it works and when and if you should do it.
Yeah. And I mean, we did cover a lot of the risks and the populations that should not be thinking about doing keto because it's dangerous, or there could be health risks.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's probably a lot of families where like, and this isn't just for keto, but it's like whatever diet, like someone in the family's on, the whole family ends up being on it, and it might not be safe for kids or for like everyone's individual as far as their health needs. So that's something to think about as well.
Yep. And it is a diet. So it's part of, when we talked about diet culture with Lisa Duncan, that was a really powerful one. And it is just another diet that people start following to lose weight. A lot of times it's to lose weight.
Yeah, exactly.
Episode 60, Diet Culture and the Fitness Industry with Lisa Duncan.
Yeah, that was
a really good one.
Yeah, diet culture stuff. Yeah, good one for sure.
And also, actually, I'm just thinking that one that we did on all the diet trends over the years.
I think that was like 12.
Episode 12. Yeah. Good. Very close. But that was a really eye-opening one too, just to talk about all the different types of diets over the years.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Anything else?
No. I think people can check out the website for the blog article that Rochelle has written. Yeah, that's mywifethedietitian.com. And if you have any questions or comments, you can email us at mywifetherd@gmail.com. We'll also have some new stuff up on our social media pages, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. So make sure to check those out. And next week, we have another guest, Jen Hernandez, will be joining us to be talking about kidney disease. That's next Monday. Yeah, and I think Nutrition Nuggets, we're going to do how to build a smoothie. Yeah, that's in a couple days on Wednesday. So join us for that one as well. All right. Well, thanks for joining us today, and we will talk to you soon. Thanks for joining us today on My Wife the Dietitian. If you like what you heard, don't be shy. Leave us a comment or review, and be sure to share our podcast with your friends. If you'd like to hear more, hit that subscribe button. You can also follow us on our social media pages for updates, episode trailers, and other odds and ends. For more info and links on what we discussed on today's episode, check the show notes. We'll be back next week with another informative and fun-filled episode.